shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Oh, can't quite get all of that in there. Hello, it's Jane Reaction, and today we're going to talk about knee and toe placement when we're doing squats. Very exciting. It's Technical Tuesday. You ready? Let's go. All right. When you are performing a squat, there are a couple of things that you typically hear. One is going to be that you want your knees to track over your toes, but not too far over your toes. Okay, that was two things. So let's unpack that statement, that whole statement, into the two things. So the first is knees tracking over the toes. So if my feet are facing forward and I'm going into a squat, I want to make sure that my knees go over my second and third toes. Now, when you see people doing squats, sometimes you might see them have their knees come in, or you might see them wobbling a little bit. Those are examples of knee valgus. Knee valgus typically is telling you that you have muscle imbalances in your body. So namely, muscles like your adductors, your inner thighs, or your TFL, your IT band, and maybe part of your quads are going to be overactive. So if you have any sort of knee valgus, when you go to do a squat, you want to stretch those muscles. So it can be holding a stretch, a static stretch. Ooh, TFL, like aye. Or it can be foam rolling, your inner thighs or outer thighs, things like that. The other thing that you want to do to cut down on knee valgus or to improve is to improve the stability around the knee, which means strengthening your glutes, your side glutes, specifically your glute med and your glute min. A lot of people don't tend to work these muscles, which is why I always like to throw in different banded exercises that allow us to perform abduction, abduction, basically away from the midline. So I think of it as you're abducting your legs away from the midline. So ways to work on your glute med and glute min are band walks, very fun, okay? Side leg lifts, or you can get down on the ground, do some leg lifts here. You can put this around your knees, do moves like clamshells. So notice in each of these moves, I'm getting my legs or my knees to separate from each other, performing abduction. Those are all going to work your side glute. So basically, strengthening your side glute and massaging or stretching out all of these other muscles here are going to help cut down on any knee valgus that you might have. So if you want, go get a camera or a mirror and just do, a squat and see if your knees are tracking over your toes or not. Remember that knees tracking over toes comes into play no matter what way your toes are pointing. So if they're straight ahead, I want my knees straight ahead. If they're out a little bit, my knees go out. If I'm in a sumo squat, still want to track my toes. So always be cognizant of what your knees are doing when you're doing a squat. And if they start to go in a little bit, you need to regroup and think about taking it more slowly and really making sure they track. And in the meantime, stretching and strengthening those underactive and overactive muscles. Now the other cue that I mentioned that I sort of threw in there was that your knees should never go past your toes. Oh my gosh. Raise your hand if you've heard that one. I have a million times. So what they're saying is that as you go into a squat, you want to keep sort of your butt back. You want to make sure that your knees, if you drop a line from your knees to your toes, they're staying back. Now, the issue with that is that by trying to keep my knees from going over my toes, a lot of people tend to lean forward in your squat. Now, the reason that people started to say don't have your knees go over your toes was that there was a study back in, 73 or something like that, where they did a study that showed that if your knees went forward in front of your toes, you put more strain on the knees. So everybody said, all right, don't do that, keep your knees back. Well, the problem is, because of your center of gravity, to compensate for your knees staying back, typically tend to lean forward more. And so the strain that you lost here, or you saved here, you put less strain here, you're putting a ton more strain in your back. So one of the studies showed that, if you lean forward more to keep your knees forward, you're putting 28% less strain on your knees, but you're putting 1,000% more strain on your back. That doesn't sound so good. and that, you know, your back, you need help. You don't want to do that. So, a lot of people will vary in how much their knees go over their toes. And it's all basically on your own physiology. If you have longer leg bones, your knees are just going to naturally go past your toe at, you know, you're going to go over more. So for me, if I let my knees go over my toes, you can see here, it's maybe like an inch, not very much. But if you have longer limbs, it may you may have even more overhang. But regardless of how much it does, that is perfectly normal. So don't worry about what your knees do, if they go forward or not, as long as you're getting a good back position and keeping straight, okay? The one thing you do want to think about though is watching what happens with your heels. So some people, they go down into a squat and their heels raise up. So what's going on here? Your weight is shifting forward, you're going to be putting more strain on your back, and you're leaning forward off of your toes. Why is it happening in the first place? Well, that happens because people have limited range of motion in dorsiflexion. What is dorsiflexion? Dorsiflexion is basically just saying, can I get my toes to pull back towards my shins? So some people may not be able to pull very far, whereas me, I guess that's okay. It's good enough, we'll say. So when they go into their squat, their feet are saying, I can't keep contact anymore, and the heels raise, and then everything sort of leans forward. Now, two things you should do for this. One, if you're going to continue squatting, you're either going to reduce your range of motion so that your heels stay on the ground, or what you can do is you can take a book or something else stable. Usually at the gym you would put like a plate, a weight under your heels, and just elevate them just a little bit, because it might be a little too much, so that you can keep contact with all 3 points on the ground, so both sides of the balls of your feet and your heels as you're going into your squat. So that's one thing you can do. But the other thing that you really should be doing is working on your dorsiflexion. So a simple way you can do that is by getting a band. And you can have a friend help you. I don't have any friends, so I mounted one of my bands against something sturdy. And basically, put tension on the band and just flex your toes, bringing them towards your shin. So this is going to strengthen the muscles to get better dorsiflexion. And eventually this will result in better range of motion, and hopefully your heel's not coming off the ground when you're doing the squat. So what are the takeaways for today? One, make sure that your knees always track over your toes, regardless of whether your toes are forward, out, or in a sumo squat. Two, don't worry about it if your knees go past your toes. Perfectly natural, perfectly understandable. And three, make sure that your heels are staying in contact with the ground, preferably with the ground, and if not, something else to sort of help with the lift. And work on your dorsiflexion. Work on your dorsiflexion, work on your glute med. Now I just gave you homework. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for Technical Tuesday, and I will see you next week. Bye.